folks. Thank you for joining us with Education Matters, another episode today. Today we have Michelle Levell, who is a candidate running for state rep in District
Rockingham 7.
Rockingham 7. And we'll also be talking about Education Matters with Michelle, as she is working diligently on issues concerning school choice. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Yeah. Well, since we last spoke, I guess we've had some developments. So one of them is your state rep candidacy.
That's right. I'm running for state rep out of Windham. It's a little south of here, but I'm really excited about it. I've been working up at the State House for a number of years alongside you and other wonderful folks like Doris Hohensee and Anne-Marie Banfield. And so I figure it's time for me to step it up another notch and get in the game officially.
I know. We've been running up there, up 93 for how many years or... It's like, okay, we may as well go up there and vote.
Absolutely. I've been hanging up there for a long time, going up there about as often as some of the reps are already. Mm-hmm. So I figure it's time to put my name in the hat and give it a try.
Right. Well, we appreciate that a lot, very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, some of the topics here you have are, why are you running? I guess that's one of the first questions.
Well, as we just said, I've been doing this following legislation and trying to be part of the solution for a number of years. It started off with homeschooling, but it expanded every year as I got more and more aware of some of the issues that were happening. It started in education and it kind of grew. And so at this point, I want to be part of the solution. I want to help be that effort to bring more legislators up to the State House that respect local control, whether it's in education or in some of the other issues. The business environment in our state has been stifled with more and more regulation, and the respect of individual rights has deteriorated in the last handful of years. Enough's enough. I want to be part of getting all of that back in check.
Yes.
So that's why I want to run.
Great. And we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I know, folks, we're just going to kind of go through this list because we only have a half hour, so we have a lot to say. So someday maybe I'll have an hour show. But anyhow, we're going to kind of run through this, but obviously the points will be made. So the education now, you're working with schoolchoice.org?
Well, it's school choice for nh.org. I've been holding a blog there and Facebook page for a handful of months, although I've been doing that work for years. I ramped it up this last fall in anticipation of the legislative season, and I've been keeping track of legislation for my own group, the School Choice Group, but also for the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which is a nonpartisan, all-volunteer organization that tracks all the legislation and has for the last 10 years. I'm a former board member, so I continue to give testimony on behalf of the NHLA following primarily education issues, not just school choice and not just homeschooling, but also student privacy issues. There have been a lot of problems with that. My eyes were first opened to that back in 2008 when there was a bill for the unique pupil identifier.
Yes.
Then the House Education Committee Chairman, Emma Rouse, who's now serving on the State Board of Education, literally tried to do a runaround the legislature and enact anti-homeschooling legislation that would have made New Hampshire the most regulated in the entire country. Although the State House voted it down, she wasn't satisfied with that, and she tried to get those regulations written into the rules without legislative authority. And that was just insane. It totally ignored the process, and it was things like that kind of motivated me to get more and more involved.
And be more the watchdog here.
Well, you have to. It's because people have a certain level of trust and comfort, and they assume that you want to think legislators are going to try to look out for you, and I saw firsthand they weren't. So that's what got me more and more involved over the years. So because of that, one thing kind of led to another. I started working as a volunteer for the Network for Educational Opportunity almost 2 years ago, almost when we started. Not quite 2 years ago, but that's the K through 12 scholarship organization here in the state that solicits private donations for underprivileged families across the state so that they can potentially bridge that gap for tuition at an out-of-district
Yes,
public school.
This is extremely important, folks, for you to know about that. If you qualify, and I'm sure there's some qualifying factors.
Yes.
You can go to the website, and but find out that if you qualify, your son or daughter could go to a private school with some scholarship funding.
Our deadline for the applications did pass. It was June 15th, but look at our website. Consider it for the following year. So it's a great program. There's more of these types of scholarship programs across the country, and so I'm involved with that organization. I had served on the board at Liberty Harbor Academy here in Manchester. I stepped down from that just recently so I could run my campaign. And I'm also a founding member of a charter school that we're proposing to bring to Windham, which would be a STEM prep school modeled after the very, very successful Academy for Science and Design in Nashua.
Oh, great.
So we just submitted a proposal to our school board, and we're hoping that we can have a local district approved model that would then be open and running by fall of 2015.
Wow, the fall of 2015. Okay, next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Busy.
Right, because I know there's a waiting list in Nashua.
There is. Last year, ASD had roughly 250 students, but had a list of 200 on their wait list.
Wow.
And now that's a high school level. What we're proposing is a grades 1 through 8. So it'd be STEM prep, so it'd be grade level appropriate, but families are looking for options, even in Windham, and it's just a different approach. And it's all about school choice, empowering parents with a variety of options. Not everybody can afford real expensive tuition at some of the private schools. So there are these alternatives.
Great.
So whether it's a charter school, this scholarship organization, or homeschooling, there's a variety of options, and it's all about parent-led instruction, regardless of what that method may be, some hybrid of that model. But that's local control. That's parents having their kids' educational needs met, regardless of where that might be.
Well, the parents know their child best. They know if they're an overachiever or if they need to be challenged because they're not being challenged in the public school or wherever they are, or even in a charter school. Maybe they need to go to a private school and qualify for some of these scholarship funds. There's so many options for parents.
And increasingly, it's because people who respect parents, respect teachers, respect that kind of local control are allowing these options to flourish in our state.
And I appreciate the work you're doing
Thank
in
you.
promoting that regard.
Thanks.
And working towards it. Well, what's the next topic here that you'd like to cover?
Well, there have been other parental empowerment bills that have been really important over the last few years. I believe it was in 2011 there was a bill, but it didn't get approved and written into law until 2012, but it's the parental opt-out bill. Doris, Anne-Marie, and I think you also were involved in that, Deb. That's a law that now is across the whole state in use at public schools that allows parents to object to individual materials in an individual class for their own child. This has been an issue up in Guilford. That made the
One
news.
of the reading materials.
Exactly. And it's happened in Bedford. It's happened in a variety of schools across the state. So that's kind of why this is so important. And it empowers parents for their own child's education. It's not censorship for the class or for the school. It's just for that one child saying this book is, or that whatever that material may be, is not appropriate for my kid. Or it requires that kind of parental notification where you have to sign off on it, some positive affirmation, this is going to be okay, I approve. It includes parents, it respects their position in the directing their kids' education. And it may not, for most parents, it's not a problem. But occasionally, like we saw just recently this spring, it was an issue, and it is important. And it's not just sex ed classes, it's a variety of classes.
Could be, for religious reasons or
A
just
number of
anything.
things. So it could be for any number of reasons. Maybe a child is sensitive to certain issues because of things happening in that family's dynamics.
Right.
And it's just respecting parents and individual families and giving them that voice for their own child's education.
Yeah. So we're up in Concord working to those ends
Absolutely.
and maintaining those freedoms and rights.
Yes, because there was a repeal bill that we had to fight off in 2013. The bill had not really even been in effect a full year before we had to defend it. And again, we were so overwhelmingly provided proof of why this was so important. The sponsor of that bill eventually voted against it. So it's
Arm
really
twisting?
I think he finally saw the light and saw why this was important and listened to people.
Oh, he was against the bill
He
before he was
sponsored
for it.
the repeal.
Oh, okay, so he changed his mind.
He changed his mind,
the
but it
last
was
minute.
because he listened. He listened to people like
the
you and
others.
me and Doris and Anne-Marie who are up there all the
Right.
time, but he listened to the number of parents who came up there to testify, who said, this is important because. And
That's good.
it was great.
But
And-
if we're not there or you're not there, this is not going to happen. This
Oh.
is not going to be defended,
Exactly. And so that's why getting involved has been so important. But that was one of the big successes I think we've had in the last handful of years. We defeated two very egregious homeschool regulation bills in 2007 and 8. We've even helped deregulate homeschooling in the last couple of years. So now there's only one-time only notification, and the year-end results are kept private in the family. You don't have to submit them to the reporting agency, because it was one rep referred to it as an axe hanging over the homeschooler's head. They actually have a higher threshold for success than public schools,
Right.
where individual students had to prove a standard that no other student, no traditional student had to prove to be allowed to progress on a single test.
Right.
So it was a lopsided requirement. I don't think anybody's against wanting our children to succeed, but having it dependent upon a test or a single evaluation and coming down to either you progress or your whole program is on probation
Right, it's
is a lopsided requirement,
Right,
and we
right.
were able to get that
That's
dealt with. And the charter school funding, we had broad bipartisan support for bringing charter school funding to 50% of the state average cost per pupil. It was eventually defeated in the House Finance Department committee this spring, but when it first came to the floor, it was held for study last year, and it came to the floor again in January. We had tremendous success. We had Democrats speaking against party leadership, saying this is important for providing options to our families.
Well, they represent their constituents, and their constituents want options, or they want, another model of education. And
It's all about meeting the individual child's needs and educational goals, and I think more legislators are receptive to that. And it's not trying to be anti-public school at all. That can fit a number of students. The vast majority, frankly, are perfectly happy where they're at in their local schools. But it's not one size fits all. I've got 3 children, and public school didn't fit their needs. And so I try to advocate for families who have kids like mine who wouldn't fit that traditional mold. But not everybody can afford to homeschool. Not everybody can afford a private school choice. So I try to advocate for those folks
That's
who
great.
who
Those-
need other
and
options.
those students. That's great. Terrific. So the next, are we going on to the next topic, or are we still in
We can,
school?
if you want.
I'm just following you.
Oh, sure. Well, Common Core has been a big issue the last couple years. I know you've been up there on a regular basis, filming and holding our legislators accountable. And the reason I've been part of that defense of local control has been Common Core is by definition a standardization of our education.
National standardization.
Top down completely. Both, the federal enticements through race to the top grants that never panned out, not in New Hampshire. It was chasing after federal money that really we had a slim chance at getting. That was the excuse for passing it. We've had a massive rewrite of our educational rules to accommodate Common Core. Schools are spending millions on Common Core aligned textbooks. Yeah, they can choose which textbook, but it's all to teach to the test. It's truly like No Child Left Behind on steroids. It's more teaching to the test, not less. And it fails to recognize the unique needs of children, whether they're at special ed or gifted. It fails to recognize the unique needs of individual districts. Manchester is not the same as Wyndham, is not the same as Croydon, is not the same as anywhere. I mean, so Manchester should be able to meet Manchester's needs.
And I know Mayor Gatsis is trying to be that voice for Manchester, but he's meeting the opposition from the commissioner.
Unfortunately, that has been that top-down dictating this is what you will do. And the Board of Education, as you've talked about a number of times back in 2010, kind of rushed through an approval process where they officially adopted it. If you look in their minutes, it says they adopted it. And they did that on behalf of the entire state. So now all of the districts have to meet these requirements, whether or not it's been voted on. I know my own town has never voted on it, yet they've spent millions in new textbooks.
So basically our school boards are answering to the state school board.
Yes.
They are not autonomous, really.
I've been told by others, school board members that also serve in the House, that that's essentially what they're supposed to do, that they're required to by statute. So I've got a concern with that.
We
that
have to fix that legislation.
Different districts have unique needs. Nashua is not the same as Manchester, although you both have very urban components versus some other areas of this state. And I don't see why it should be so top down. No. And there should be some approval. Not even a public hearing has been held in many districts. So, individual families are certainly being shut out of this discussion. The cost to align to Common Core with the testing,
for the taxpayers,
the computerized testing. I know there's a couple years where they'll be allowed to slowly implement it from a pencil and paper test to computerized. But still, that we're obligated to meet those requirements and do so in a way that aligns to those tests. And what happens to the data? Again,
the data mining.
Student privacy is compromised, just as it was in 2008 with the unique pupil identifier. That's no protection. Hackers can identify individuals with as few as 3 data points, and those protections do not exist currently in the way our own database has been set up at the state level. And they're deliberately interconnecting these databases. So health records and student academic records and all these other state agencies can have access and input, and they're all part of one big, massive database.
Amazing.
We attended a hearing, I think it was in early May, where they're talking about an early childhood program that begins at birth.
Yes.
So early childhood is no longer defined as age 8 or even age 6, where compulsory education attendance kicks in. It starts at birth.
So if your child goes to any institution,
well, they'll already have an account. They'll already be, they were there to be supportive as a parent, but whether you like them or not, they're going to be intruding. And who's to say what's being a good parent?
the data follows the child.
It does.
So no matter where that child goes,
Yes.
if they're plugged into that data system,
Yes.
then there's a bias already. When someone's looking at your child coming into a program saying, oh, they look at past history, look at past performance, look at past family demographics, and, it's already a
Right.
bias toward your child.
And it's not just academic records, where of course you'd want your teacher or your child's teacher to know from one year to the next where your kids have strengths and weaknesses and how to best connect and work with each individual student. It's way beyond that. There are 400 data points, and some of them are very
Non-academic data points.
you're right, non-academic data points. Some of them are very innocuous. It doesn't matter. Where's your email? For the school to contact you, that makes sense. But some of it is totally irrelevant. Why do they need your voting registration status? I'm sorry, that should not even be part of that record.
So they're following your political affiliations?
I don't know if it's so much what party you're registered for or how often you vote, but none of that should be part of that academic record of your
Somebody's using that
child.
information for something.
And it's just inappropriate, and there's no way to opt out of it. Parents don't even know that there are these data points. It's just, you submit those records when you register your child each year. They're part of that, and it just simply
It's
continue.
integrated, right?
It
So
is.
it's integrated with the city's websites. So obviously they're getting the voter registration information,
They are.
and
And then the federal FERPA laws, the Family Education Rights and Protection Act, at the federal level, the protections have been eroded over the last handful of years. So third-party corporations who have nothing to do with your child's education can access it. And for our state laws that simply say, we'll follow federal law, that's not a protection. There's no guarantee that our student information even stays within the school or the district. Third-party companies can access it, and there have been horrible examples in other states where dental agencies have used it to solicit for health care
Right.
for children. It just doesn't respect
So you wonder, how
privacy.
did I get this notice? How did they get my name for this in the mail? You get something in the mail. Well, they got it from those data points.
And there have been hacks. There have been information released publicly by people who have a grudge, or that's the mischief they do. Those databases are not secure.
No.
And so
You can't opt out. You think we can get legislation in some regard to
there have been attempts.
restore our privacy?
There have been attempts to do that. They did not meet with success this year.
Representative Kirk's bills?
Representative Kirk, Representative Cordelli had a great bill that
For
we were
teachers and students.
teachers and students. I mean, frankly,
Right.
I know it sounds a little wacky. People think, oh, it'll never happen here in New Hampshire. But even Exeter has been capturing biometric data on students, their fingerprints, for something as minor as a lunch program.
You can't
Really?
take lunch unless you provide your fingerprints?
Fingerprints
To
in
use-
exchange for your lunch. And that's here in our own state. We can't just say it happened in Texas or Florida. It's happening here.
And then they'll use your fingerprints someplace else?
And
We
it's-
have this wonderful database of fingerprints.
And so where's the privacy? Where's the
You
protections?
never know the limitations.
And once it's out there, how do you ever recapture it and limit that exposure? It's out there. So these are issues, and this is why I find that the more I see what's happening up in Concord, I have to get involved.
That's right. That's great. Well, fighting Common Core, all ways than one.
You bet. Well, it hurts special ed students increasingly because of the USDOE's change to their 2% rule as to how they'll allow 2% of special ed kids to not have to meet the same guidelines. They are actually changing that so that all special ed kids have to meet the same grade level thresholds as other students. And the adaptations that special ed kids require hasn't been tested with these tests, with the Common Core assessments that they're required to do. So it's not, frankly, special ed professionals, experts in the field, are saying the special ed kids are going to be greatly harmed under Common Core and these other changes at the US DOE level. It's, we're just trying to help our
I think
kids.
we're all guinea pigs with this Common Core. Nothing's been tested, really.
Nothing's been tested. I know you've talked about it extensively.
And the early childhood educators have come out against it. for
exactly.
preschool and kindergarten. They're appalled.
It's not grade level or age appropriate.
Not appropriate.
You know, so these kids need a voice, and that's what I'm trying to do up in Concord.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, we have about 3 minutes left, I think.
my.
I got the 5-minute already. All right, so we're going to have to wrap up quick
Sure.
here. So where do you want to go next?
Well, there are other issues that I've found myself involved in over the years besides education, although that is my passion. I started getting more involved with Second Amendment legislation a couple years ago. I work with, as a volunteer, with the Second Amendment Sisters. But it all started because a couple years ago my house was burglarized.
Oh, darn.
I was lucky. I caught them before they actually broke in. They were ringing my doorbell. They had multiple people at different entrance points.
Goodness.
I was able to just ask enough questions to make them nervous and leave.
Oh, wow.
But it was because of that I'm like, I'm not going to be caught unprepared again. I was home alone with 2 of my kids, and that situation really could have gone another way. And I decided right then, I'm not going to let myself be a victim.
No.
So I work every month with the Second Amendment Sisters to train women to be safe and knowledgeable with firearms instruction. And it's something I feel very passionate about. And I've been tracking legislation on behalf of SAS the last couple of years as well.
That's great. And you have a couple other issues here.
I oppose the gas tax. Again, it's a lack of transparency. More than 27% of those funds collected from the gas tax that was just raised 4 cents per gallon, effective July 1, that money isn't even used for the infrastructure. Yes, our roads and highways need improvement, but that money is not even going where it's intended.
And that's the problem with this
That's
whole
the problem.
taxation.
And too many legislators haven't been open and honest about that.
Okay, we got about a minute or half a minute left. The buffer zone bill.
There was a buffer zone bill trying to limit free speech. That's ridiculous. It was thrown out of the U.S. Supreme
Any
Court.
problems there could have been managed and handled another way with the police
Absolutely.
department.
Absolutely.
Right, and the redefinition of a PAC. Okay, well, we got to get going, and you can give your website real quick.
Yes, www.michelle4nh.com.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much. We'll come again. Take care, folks. Thank you for watching. Bye.